Hey, good morning, sunshine. Last time we talked about the KKK in Indiana. We talked about how there were two groups, one right after the Civil War, which had a hatred against African Americans, and then the second one that came to light in the 1920s. They broadened their group of hatred to include the Catholics and immigrants. If you remember from my peeps that took ethnic studies, we know that immigrants were hated throughout history because they took American jobs. And they're different. Uh, they were against drinking, they were against short skirts, they were against all of the changes, the cultural changes of the 1920s. But we do know that it ended when D.C. Stevenson was arrested um, for everything the Klan was against. He was a drinker, he was a womanizer, and then arrested ultimately for second degree murder um, for abusing that woman on the train. Um, but prior to all that, the Klan was a very powerful social group. You even got elected into office if you were part of the Klan. Um, but this chapter has a lot of different information in it. It's going to feel like we're jumping all over the place because it started with the Klan, and now we're going into basketball. So I'm not a huge basketball fan, but I know Indiana is. So let's just go all the way back to the beginning. And we've got our buddy here, James Naismith. And they said he's the one that brought basketball to its popularity. And he was a Canadian PE teacher, and he was looking for a sport to play indoors during the winter. And so by the 1900s, Indiana had fully embraced this sport. Now, this part I did find interesting is the Indiana High School Athletic Association was formed in 1903. But here's the big part of it. In 1997, they divided the state's high schools into four classes based on enrollment. That is a big deal, and I'll tell you why later. The first state basketball tournament took place in 1911, and you can see here who won. Here's some basketball information for those peeps. All right. I also learned that to be a good Hoosier, we should probably know who this guy is. His name is John Wooden. They say he was an excellent, excellent, excellent coach. True basketball lovers of the game know who this guy is. And from the people I have talked to, their eyes light up when they talk about John Wooden. So he played for Martinsville State Championship team in 1927, went on to play for Purdue, All-American for 3 years, and then he coached at UCLA for 27 years and had an 88-game winning streak, and then 10 National College Athletic Association titles. So he was a big deal. This is one of his quotes, too, about our gyms in Indiana. The size of our gyms astounded people from other parts of the country. Before I entered high school, Martinsville built a gym that seated 5,200 people. The whole town had only 4,800, but we always filled the gym. And they said at one point the state boasted 15 of the nation's 16 largest high school gyms. Yeah, we liked basketball. So here is the latest list that I could find in Indiana gyms. We always say Newcastle is the biggest. It's actually not by seat count. So Seymour, home of John Cougar Mellencamp, in East Chicago, and then Newcastle. Here, I'll let you take that in. Take it in. I'm going to pause it here for just 1 second, guys. All right, I am back with you. Here is why that 1997 decision to split the schools into four classes based on enrollment was a big deal. In 1954, they call it the David and Goliath Showdown, and it was between Milan High School and Muncie Central. Milan was a very tiny town. At that point, it wasn't even on the map. They had 162 students, and no one was over the height of 6'2". Now, Muncie Central had a much larger school enrollment. They said they had more students in their school than Milan had in their entire town. But Milan won the state championship because of Bobby Plump's 15-foot jump shot in the last 15 seconds of the game. And if you want to watch that, you can watch that here. It does not show up well on my screen recording. But they were allowed to play a small school versus a large school because there was no class division yet based on enrollment. And so people were upset by that 1997 decision because there was never going to be an opportunity for a David and Goliath showdown. Because of that division, Milan would never be able to play Muncie Central again. So there was no more miracle game. Milan Miracle is what they called it. And so if you've watched the game Hoosier or the movie Hoosiers, it was based on this Milan victory, 2 Oscar nominations. And if you really want to know, you can see through the time who has won the state championships up until 1954. So right there is the Hoosiers movie. So a lot of people were upset that we went into that school division based on enrollment. It was a big deal. The last part of this chapter deals with, as you can see here, alcohol flappers and French Lick, which was a resort at that time down in southern Indiana. So what's happening here is older folks and church-going citizens were anxious about what they were seeing because you have an increase in gambling, you have an increase in this provocative dancing, the skirts are getting shorter, the Hollywood movies are changing, jazz music is coming into play, and people are worried about morals. And we saw that too, based on our writers and authors. They said, you know what, Indiana is getting away from family tradition. So some people are excited for the change and other people are a little bit worried about what they're seeing. So we do have jazz entering the scene, fast dances like the Charleston. If you want to watch it and you know we would have in class, you can click on that video right here. But dance moves are getting faster, a little bit more risque, okay? Flappers, bobbed hair, sometimes shorter skirts. They were dancers. Their expression was considered, as one person put, unholy mingling of the civilized with the savage. People are buying cars, and we know what happens in cars. So the young are driving to jazz clubs, secluded dating spots, dark theaters. Movies were changing. The Hollywood was coming out with one called Single Wives, and it was a chance to see women who sometimes listen when forbidden love calls. Wild Company was another one, showed in Marion, Indiana, promising wild ways and jazz days where parents are indifferent and children are in search of thrills. They pick their own path for play. Oof, those dang young people. The song Hoosier Hop was used in a 1929 film, It's a Great Life, and it showed that new styles of music and dancing had caught on in Indiana. So this change nationwide, Indiana isn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Indiana isn't immune to it. We're changing with the times. Some people like it and some people don't. Prohibition outlawed alcohol in 1920. And so up came speakeasies, and speakeasies were illegal bars. And so they're popping up out everywhere. People are gambling, there's prostitution. Here's what I thought was interesting is Terre Haute became like the red light district. It's kind of like Amsterdam in the Netherlands. It's that red light district where you're going to have all sorts of that evil activity with drinking, gambling, prostitution. So yeah, woohoo, Terre Haute. We had our own red light district. I didn't know that. So the 18th Amendment outlawed alcohol, and then the 21st Amendment repealed that 18th Amendment in 1933. And they said sometimes police would just turn their eye to it if they caught it. Distilleries, homemade distilleries, what is that, moonshine? And then sometimes the police even joined in on the action. I said a couple times in class that Indiana really was the place to be. Indiana was it. Okay, so I mean, if you really look at the 1920s, home of the KKK, we're dancing, we're dressing the way the 1920s do, and we really became this vacation resort spot. And so we had two of America's most luxurious spas, and those were French Lick Springs Hotel, and it has been operating since the 1840s. I have never been there. It's a little over my price range, but I do hear it's beautiful. But that one is French Lick Resort, okay? Some people have termed it the eighth wonder of the world. It is beautiful. You can't deny that. It's huge. This one is actually West Baden Springs Hotel. So there's two, okay? So you've got French Lick Springs Hotel, which is this one. You can see there's no dome there. And then this one is West Baden Springs. There you see the big dome. I guess I should put those in a different order. And then inside the dome, that's what they consider some to say the eighth wonder of the world. And this one has been open since 1903. Take it in, take it in. And then you can see the pool, you can see the inside of the rooms. At this time, too, they said there was water. There's certain water to have had healing powers, helpful for diseases, stomach, intestines, liver, gallbladder, get rid of toxins, indigestion, gout, diseases of the heart and blood vessels, urinary tract infections, diseases of the skin and the nervous system. And so that's what that is. Here's a Pluto water advertisement from French Lick. And ultimately, see, people are trying to better themselves. But this Pluto water was bottled for people. And it was bottled in French Lick, Indiana. Sold across the country. A cure for a multitude of ills. Boy, wouldn't that be great if it worked? All you have to do is drink water. Boom. All right. And then our mayor at that time, Thomas Taggart, said and made French Lick Resort a destination for the rich and famous. And he was president of the Monoon Railroad. He owned a brewery. He owned a quarry. Rocks, go dig out rocks. And what ended up happening is we didn't have the best roads, so people would just arrive by train. And so we were kind of a hot spot between Chicago and French Lick, and they would just ride the Monoon Railroad, and it would just drop them right off at the front of French Lick Resort. And it's interesting because they said they'd stay for a month, then go to Louisville for the Kentucky Derby, and then back here to see the Indy 500. So boom, right in the middle of it all. That's pretty cool. I have heard rumors that Al Capone stayed at this hotel, but they have found no evidence that Al Capone ever stayed there. In fact, legend has it that the mayor, Taggart, refused to let Capone hold his wedding reception at French Lick Springs Hotel. So no gangsta activity there. We became a musical state. Hoagy Carmichael. I'm telling you, if you listen to this video, you'll recognize it. It's Heart and Soul. Play it. Sing along to it. People play it on the piano. Okay, I will digress and then let you listen to it. Another famous high school in Indianapolis was the Crispus Attucks High School, founded in 1927. It was an all-black school. Very good at basketball, state champs twice, and a lot of jazz musicians came from the school. And most blacks at this time were expected to play religious music, R&B, or jazz. And here's a cellist composer, David Baker, that I'll let you read about there. Okay, so this chapter is all about change. We got our buddy who's that? Louis Armstrong. Jazz clubs were becoming extremely popular. Look at that. Indiana Avenue had 25 jazz clubs. So I'll let you read a little bit about that on your own. But times, they are changing in Indiana. Hey, Super Peeps, if you have any questions, holler back at me. If I've confused you, let me know. I hope all is well with you guys. I really do. And I miss you. I do miss laughing with you and talking with you guys. So it just isn't the same. But like I said, I hope all is well and holler at me if you guys need anything.